May I also take this special opportunity and singular honor to introduce and welcome Starbex Uganda. Starbex has put all the initiatives required for this engagement of today, and we have been working with Piaka all through. Thank you so much, Starbex, for making it possible for us to engage. And in the same vein, allow me also to introduce and make recognition of some people in the room. Mr. Rugendo of Uganda, of Air Tanzania. Mr. Rugendo, Air Tanzania, thank you so much for being our partner, and thank you so much for growing and promoting the integration of East African. May I take this initiative again to introduce Mr. George Arodi. George, Uganda Bati. Again, thank you so much. We want to also appreciate and introduce the presence of Kasita in the house, one of the key pillars of trade in Uganda. Kasita, thank you so much for making it this initiative. Kasita is a trade name. For anything trade, you mention Kasita, you will have got it. Thank you so much. Honorable members, we still have another engagement with Kasita, and we will be making a communication. Allow me also to introduce Mukwano Industries. Mukwano Industries, thank you so much for creating time and for supporting the trade and integration of Uganda and East Africa. Allow me to also introduce Mr. Etudu Matia of Ministry of East African Community Affairs, the mother ministry that takes charge. Thank you so much for creating time and making it possible. And of course, I want to introduce and recognize Mr. Byambenu Peter. Thank you so much. Allow me now to take this opportunity to welcome the Starbex director to come and also address us briefly so we hear what Starbex is doing.
The Speaker of the East African Parliament, the East African Legislative Assembly, our brother Honorable Kakok from Kenya, is an ardent supporter of the private sector everywhere you go. And all the guests available here, and those that have not made it possible here, I want to thank you for coming. It's such an honor to speak before the frontliners of trying to get Africa and trying to get our region working. I think our region has not been working for quite some time, and I don't know whether this is an opportunity for me to put up the challenges you're facing, or to inform you, or to lecture you. But since I'm speaking, we shall see what goes where, and you will allocate it, because I'm talking to the engine of the region. I'm speaking on behalf of many people who have not managed to make it here, and we have very many challenges. But I will first begin by introducing Starbex International to you. Starbex International is an oil and marketing company that was locally registered here in Uganda in 2009. And we have over 150 stations currently in Uganda. With those 150 stations, we are now ranked the second in Uganda in terms of volume and turnover. In bulk purchases at the pipeline, I prefer to call it the East African pipeline of Kenya, because I believe in the East African arrangement. We are number 4 in terms of volumes that we purchase at the pipeline. So we are the fastest growing company, and we have plans to spread across Africa. Right now we're in DRC Congo, and we've just entered into Congo from the eastern part, and then we are of course in Kenya, Tanzania we are coming very soon, and Rwanda hopefully will be there also in a very short time. Now we have challenges as as a business community, so many would take the whole night and day here, although I plan to speak for 10 minutes. The biggest challenge now, we will only zero down on one challenge, that is the crossing of our product through the border, mainly Malaba, Busia. It's a nightmare. It has been a nightmare, I think, for the past 50 years. In spite of all these wonderful steps we have taken as an East African community. For example, we now have one-stop center in terms of your tax payment. Now, when we in the petroleum industry pay our taxes, even before we load, we pay our taxes. And once the product is loaded from Eldoret or Nairobi or Mombasa, any of the ports, surprisingly, just because of a piece of paper that is supposed to be issued to one of the clearing boys here to take it to the immigration offices or to the revenue offices, our trucks can line up for over 2 days there. First of all, it is inhuman to keep a driver under normal circumstances, under the heat, sitting in the car. No toilet facilities around, no first aid facilities. For over 50 years, it has been a norm. Sometimes you get them parked across almost 80 kilometers into Kenya, another 20 kilometers into Uganda, and for 50 years plus, it has been going on. And when I look through our history, the East African Federation used to work very well when the colonialists were here. Do you know why? Because it was working for them. It was the solution for growth. When the colonialists were here, it was one block. We had the East African Railway to help them carry all the cotton they wanted, all the tea, the coffee they wanted. So it was working for them. So when we began fighting for independence, these guys surrendered, of course, territory, and then that is when they introduced borders, when they were exiting. So after them exiting and leaving for us borders, we have jealously guarded that death trap that they left for us behind. So we have glorified the borders, we have kept the borders, we have learned everything about history, but we have never learned why these people left us borders. They left us borders to keep us stagnant and never to grow again. If we ever want to be East Africans, if we ever want to do away with any of the barriers that are affecting the trade in East Africa, just do away with what they call a border. We can identify ourselves in very, very better ways. And when they went back to Europe, they created the European Union and all those. Even America that came late ended up creating NATO today, that is distributing all sorts of policies upon us, and we are following. Very simple. We are seeing all these things happening, but we are still stuck with respecting our borders. Imagine a driver who has submitted all his documents and his company is registered under URA, still has to get off his truck and go and stamp his passport, or he uses ID, stamp and make sure he crosses. And yet what he's driving is well documented in terms of paying taxes. His truck has paid taxes, has been identified by URA on both sides. The goods that is carrying have been verified, and everybody knows he's going to Uganda. But still, our wonderful people think that the truck can move alone without a driver. They still want to see the driver physically over here. And then the driver has to come almost 2-3 times a week with product from the pipeline. So why do we make our people suffer with some of these things? And yet we have all these technologies, AI, we can even have a chip, just one chip on the trailer with a scanner, and it will capture all the details that you want without even anybody coming out, without even moving out with a single paper to issue to a customs officer, so that the truck can cross. Because you have paid taxes, you have verified everything. There is a way bridge from from Mombasa to here. Why do you again keep people on the line just to issue a paper so that it can be taken to the customs and say this person has crossed with a paper? 50 years down the road, people have gone cashless, have gone paperless. We are still 50 years down the road with a single paper. After paying all the taxes, all the verification, a paper is still needed to be torn, given, and remain a copy. Take 3 days for a truck to cross. So I will not dwell on very many of those issues. I just wanted to dwell on that one. If that one is solved, you will not believe the amount of ease that we shall have trade. We shall improve. Services will be here. Even some of these prices of this fuel go up because of the mileage you have to give the driver. You have to give the driver double mileage. He has to be on the road. Imagine from Eldoret to Kampala here can only take us 10 hours at most. But the driver will have to take 2 days or 3 days. So you have to give him extra mileage. Where do you put all that expense? On the consumer. So you find that all these high prices, all these inconveniences we have on our local people, just because of the border crossing, all good. Let it be clothes, let it be the raw materials for making the cooking oil for Mukwano. I believe you also have that challenge. Everything the people of Uganda Bati, your product to reach your factory has to do with time frame. So once that time frame issue is managed at the border, you won't believe how many things it would have solved. And I want to thank the East African Legislative Assembly, my brother, as I wind up. You are doing a great job. It is not easy what people are doing. It's not easy for you even to assemble. It's even a miracle that you are assembling under this current hostile environment that these people that once colonized us don't want to ever see or ever hear about something called the East African Legislative Assembly. That's the fact of the matter. They don't even want to hear about it. They will fund HIV/AIDS programs. They will fund our youth to go and discuss, I don't know which brand of democracy, but they will never fund East African Legislative Assembly. I don't know if they're funding you. If they're funding you, then they're funding you bitterly. They will never fund that one because it is the solution to our problems eternally. So as you are there, know that we are praying for you. We know it is a difficult job. It is a very difficult job. And even me seeing you people coming here, sitting here, you are really heroes. I salute you people because it's not easy. It's not easy. They will never support you because they know the unity of East Africa is the solution to our growth and development. We will never need anyone, just our market alone of East Africa here. I think it's 10 times bigger than the European market. We don't even need to take even a single seed outside. We just trade here, Mumias, Kenya, here, just trading within ourselves alone. We will never need anything else. So support our local companies and let us grow them. Let us create capacity within them. Let us be ambassadors of the East African Legislative Assembly because I believe in it and I know there will be a solution one day that will come out of you people and we shall stand strong as a region. Thank you so much, our senior Sababuturo, for your great words. We salute each and every one of you and may God bless you. Thank you.
Allow me to invite the next speaker. The next speaker is now a member of parliament, but is going to speak from his heart in terms of sharing his personal experiences on the opportunities and the gaps in custom union and common market protocol. The honorable member that I'm inviting has been a commissioner of Uganda Revenue Authority. He's also a businessman in his own perspective. He's an employer of many people, but he's also a leader of many people. The Honorable Dickton Kateshumba, commonly known as Katesh.
The topic that has been given to me, but before I do that, I have to first officially introduce my colleague and invite her here, Joan Aniko. As you will please come forward, yes. I have been the chair of PIACA for the last 3 years, and we agreed to make some transition. So I want to formally introduce my colleague, my friend, Joan Aniku. I know she will talk to you, and formally hand over to her before I speak to you. And later on, when she's invited to speak, you know that she's the one taking over the Yaka forward. For over 6 years, but also I had an opportunity to chair the Committee of Customs on a number of occasions, and also to be the president of the African Union Director Generals of Customs. I was involved in the initial discussions for the ACFTA, but finally, the last role I had was to be the chairperson of the World Customs Organization. So I clearly have some understanding about the regional, continental, and global trade issues. And now I'm here happily representing the people of Shema, who resoundingly elected me to represent them in the Parliament of Uganda. And I'm happy to see my old colleagues here, George Jemba from Kasita. I have seen the gentleman from Kwano. There are very many. You know, when you serve people and you still shake hands after you have left, it's very good. So, the Article 5(2) of the EAC Treaty stated 4 stages of integration. The first one being the customs union, second one being common market, followed by the monetary union, and then the political federation. Those are the 4 stages of integration. In 2005, we established the customs union. The first stage, we ticked it off. And most of the celebrations we have is because we moved forward on the customs union. We established the East African Community Customs Management Act, which law is applied across the region. And in 2010, we established the Common Market Protocol. The Monetary Union, the protocol was signed in 2013, but as you know, it is expected to be realized in 2031. So that is in brief the journey of integration. And of course, the political integration, we continue to speak about it in speeches, but where I agree strongly with the President, with His Excellency, the President of Uganda, is that our future survival as the African race, as East Africa, will very much depend on political federation if we stand together. Now, in the last year, 2023, the global economy grew by 2.7% globally. Remember, we are recovering from the COVID pandemic levels. Africa grew by 3.8%. So as a continent, we grew more at a rate higher than the global economy. When you come down to East Africa grew at 5.1%, higher than any other region within Africa. Because North Africa grew at 4.6, Southern Africa 1.6, and Central Africa also about 1.7. So in terms of the global trade growth, in terms of the African trade growth, in terms of EAC as a region, is growing much better than the other regions. So what does that mean? It presents opportunities for us. If you look at the global market under trade by ESC, it grew by 2.37% and is valued at $80 billion. But the intra is still at $12.1 billion because the level of ESC intra-ESC trade is at 15%. So we have integrated. Yes, we are trading with each other, but we are still at what? 15%. Of course, it's bigger than COMESA, intra-COMESA trade. If you look at ECOWAS, ESC intra-trade is still much bigger than those other rates. What it means is that we still have an opportunity. Perhaps because we are still importing, the trade we are having with other countries is because we do not have sufficient production. So what it means is that as a region, perhaps we have to produce more of those goods that are forcing ourselves to import from outside, but also deal with the problem of the NTPs, as I will talk about. So as a region, there is still a very big opportunity. I remember when I was commissioner, we continued to encourage whatever you can find you miss in Uganda and it is in Kenya, get it from Kenya. If it is in Tanzania, get it from Tanzania. So that's how we will realize what we always call shared prosperity, by trading with each other, by making sure that we support each other. Now, what are the challenges? Where have we reached? When we established the customs union, there has many things that we should be celebrating about that we have achieved. I remember the status we had of our borders. Yes, there are challenges like the previous speaker has mentioned, but East Africa is the only region in Africa that has got one-stop border post, where there is seamless flow across the border. I think now we have more than 16 OSPPs. So that is a big achievement. We established a single customs territory, that the frontier ports of Mombasa and Dar es Salaam became the first point of entry for the region. And so you do not need to wait for the cargo in Kigali. Once it arrives at the port of Mombasa, a declaration is made and goods are released. So that is a very big achievement we had. We have harmonized standards. I know that there are some ESC standards that have been harmonized within, and so our standards bodies recognize each other, but there is still a challenge of not having enough visibility. And I really call upon Eala to really push the member states to let us have more and more standards developed so that our people can trade without having to struggle. The ESC now has got the shared certificates of origin, and I am aware that what we used to work on, the ESC regional bond, will be pioneered in November. Remember, we used to have the RCTG, the regional customs trade guarantee of COMESA. But going forward, the region will have the ESC bond. So that reduces the cost of doing business. In I think this is 2022, the CET, the Common External Tariff, was reviewed. So a fourth band was introduced. Remember, we had 3 bands. We had 0, 10, and 25. But they were problematic because if you consider 2005, at that time when these bands were created, they were created based on our level of processing, of maturity in manufacturing, and as time went on, we continued to face challenges dealing with intermediate goods and also some of the sophisticated goods. So we advocated for a new band, so 35% was introduced. But remember, we still retained the fifth one, which is the sensitive list. So each country still has got sensitive list. And the challenge that has been there is that something we used to call the stay of application. Stay of application have remained a big problem. The list has been growing legs. I used to joke with my Rwandan counterpart. Every time we met, the leg of stays of application was always growing. The one of Tanzania growing, the one of Uganda. Why? Because we think there is pressure on government to create employment, protect local industry. And so much as we are EAC, we are united, still locally within our different countries, we tend to say that, okay, this manufacturer has come, we need to protect him. So we say, okay, we are not going to implement 35% as Kenya or as Uganda. For us, we are going to put 80% to discourage another one from another imported goods from coming, because they are competing with the local industry. So that is still a sticky issue. Whether it calls for another review of the CET to create a fifth band, it is still a big challenge, because it's very hard to arrive at a consensus, and different countries have got their different pressures. Burundi has its pressures, Rwanda has its pressures. If they have a local manufacturer who is doing well and they think that they need to protect him, we end up resorting to stays of application. So that's a challenge that as an assembly you need to look at. How do we harmonize to say, much as we have buy Uganda, build Uganda, buy Kenya, build Kenya, buy Rwanda, build Rwanda, how can we have buy East Africa, build East Africa? We have not been able to reach that gap, and that's why we continue to have different stages of application. The other issue we always grappled with was the issue of commerce. I remember we started doing what we call derogation. Derogation, where we said we must protect our steel industry. This one, I must confess, I think was the chief architect to say we have a steel industry here. How do we allow cheap steel from Egypt to come and flood here at 8% against our EAC rate of say 10 or 15? How do we protect our manufacturers? How do we protect sugar? So we started introducing a derogation principle. But all of us are guilty as EAC. None of us was depositing the derogation instrument in COMESA. So we do it administratively in order to protect our industry. So there is still an issue to harmonize there as a region. Of course, the other tools, the other opportunities we have realized is the regional transit monitoring. We used to have many risks of transit dumping of goods, but since we introduced the electronic cargo tracking, at least all the counties can share a platform and monitor their goods. And that one reduced on the costs of doing business, but also quickening the clearance process. Then of course we had the challenge of the tripartite, but it's kind of corrupt, because from EAC now we are thinking big, SCFTA. But how far are we moving with SCFTA? The region came together to come up with a unified list of tariff offers, which is a very good step. But also I think the EAC region came up with a regional strategy on the implementation of the SCFTA, which was validated in July 2023. So we need to see how do we move to push a little bit more so that we can be able to trade with each other. The big elephant in the room has been on the harmonization of the domestic tax rates. As you know, we still have a very big journey. If you pick VAT, for example, Kenya, VAT is at 16%. Uganda and Tanzania is at 18. That percentage difference is very big in terms of business. So that's how you end up now products crossing the borders because they are available cheaply the other side, and here it's expensive. So as Eala, you need to push for this harmonization to continue, the discussions continue, so that we can harmonize and have ESC rates that speak to each other, so that we remove the imbalances, we remove the undue advantages that create a bit of distortion in trade. Finally, I think it is the issue of NTBs, the non-tariff barriers. My colleague from the private sector, my friend, and I thank the private sector for the good job they are doing. There are two schools of thought. You know, when you go to the treaty, there is the principle of reciprocity. So, what do we do? Do we set the forest on fire, or we continue talking? Sometimes we need to apply both tactics. I am a firm believer that this, I know the press will report it. Don't report me on this, but I know that our president believes in dialogue, and I also believe in dialogue. But how long shall we continue? We have seen cases in the region where this one says your airline is not going to land, then this one is reversed. So we want to work like that, because the list of entities has been growing. You even put in place an NTB monitoring mechanism. Even it is online, I think you have even made it electronic. So there is no shortage of analysis of NTBs. The only problem is that the NTBs is us, the people. So we have to find a solution to the non-tariff barriers. And I want to tell you something, that when we started the customs union, very many people are worried, especially here in Uganda. They're saying we are going to lose our jobs to Kenya. We are going to have so many goods coming. But when it comes to ESC, everybody has been a winner. There is no one who loses when you integrate. So the most important thing for us is to keep moving forward. We minimize the areas that divide us and find a common ground and move forward. There is no one who has joined ESC and has been a loser. That's why we are attracting other partner states to come forward. So I think that PIACA as a forum, which we intended to be replicated in all the partner states, I hope that process has been realized. We'll continue to advocate for ESC and working with our members of the assembly. We continue to promote integration. Our people need to integrate. We need to open the borders. When I was a commissioner, one of the challenges I had to deal with was to distinguish between smuggling and cross-border trade. I went to Brussels, and when I was talking to my colleagues, all the document is about cross-border smuggling. Until I challenged them, I said, in Uganda there is a border called Vura and Eala in West Nile, where my colleagues come from. I am aware that people have gardens across the border. They go and dig and harvest. So when they are coming, why do you arrest them that they are smugglers? I am aware that some of the people attend schools where some children in Congo are attending Ugandan schools because there is universal primary, free education, and vice versa. So we need to understand that those of us who sit in offices and read all these English, the reality on the ground is that people along the borders do not know these borders. So we as politicians should not make life very difficult. We should make it easy for our people to take. Thank you very much.
We will call for Uganda Bati to do a feed-in.
I'm the CEO of Uganda Bati, and as it was mentioned, we are in the steel sector. My company is part of the wider group which is called SAFAL Group of companies, which is the leader in Africa when it comes to manufacturing and distribution of roof sheets. In Kenya, we operate as MRM. That's where I had my career for about 17 years. I think the leading in Kenya, the leading in East Africa. Then in Uganda, obviously, we are operating as Uganda Bati. In Alaf, in Tanzania, we operate as Alaf Limited, which is the largest in Tanzania. I think people from Tanzania really know Alaf. I think it's one of the leading companies there. In Rwanda, we operate as Safintra Rwanda. Yeah? Then in Burundi, we used to have a company called Safintra Burundi, but because of market fundamentals, we closed the company and we sold that company to Musumba Steel. For the people coming from Burundi, you know Musumba Steel, that was our company, but we sold the machinery to Musumba Steel. So basically, in Uganda also, I double up as the vice chair of what we call Uganda Iron and Steel Manufacturers Association, which is actually forming the body of all the iron and steel manufacturers in Uganda. So I'll speak from both mouths, that of my company and also representing the actual sector. We are happy to be hosted here and to be able to share our experiences and what we feel should be done to be able to explore the full potential of the East African community. First, I'll just start with the deepening of the integration, which is actually very, very, very key. I'll speak from my heart, based on the various concessions which has been given to various member states. In fact, it's gone to the level that when I hear another member state is joining, another country is joining the member states of East Africa community, I get more and more worried because I feel that that's another market which is lost, which is gone. When member states really join the East Africa community, what they do is that they come with 1,000 concessions. Don't touch this. Let me continue the way I was. Then we say they are members of the East Africa community. So what we say is that we are a very big population. I think 300 and something million. But the market is so small. In our sector, which is steel, when Rwanda joined the East Africa community many years ago, they've been enjoying that concession up to date, meaning that they can import what they call purport to be raw material from all over the world, while we have capacity in the region. In fact, it's envisaged that by the end of this year, we are going to have overcapacity of about 40% in the region. In Uganda itself, we have roofings which are doubling their capacity and will be online by January. MMI has just commissioned their line. In Tanzania, Alaf is put another line. Dovia Steel in Tanzania, Lobia Steel has put another line. In Kenya, we have Marshall Abati which has put another line. But the market in East Africa community is actually shrinking. It's shrinking because much as we say that we have the membership, the wider membership of East Africa community, they are not just there to buy from the region because they are given concession to buy and continue buying from China. That's what happened to Rwanda. That's what happened in Rwanda for the last several years. That protocol, because I was part of the private sector in Kenya when the protocol was being written. I was a young boy of 27 years old, but I was leading the private sector because I was chairing that committee in Kenya at that young age. This Article 19 of the East Africa Community Protocol, which gives the member states that if a member state feels that by the application of the East Africa Community application of the various protocols or provisions of each community is going to affect their raw material supplies, then they can be able to invoke that. They are invoking it, suppose before it for 5 years, but now it can go on and on and on without knowing to what extent is it going to be limited. They go on and on and on. And we say that we are a big market, but we are not. And I'm very sure this actually what's going to happen in South Sudan is a thing which is going to happen in DR Congo. But one thing which needs to be noted is that in the private sector, when you are putting up investment, because the investment in this capacity, for the people who are doing the cold rolling all the way to metal coating, to the color coating, you need close to $150 million for that particular investment. And you look at the East Africa community as a wider market, which will give you the market for your products. But if the market is shrinking because of the concessions, then really, I think we have a serious problem. So time limit for the concessions need to be discussed and agreed upon. I think someone has talked about the NTBs. I don't know what's really happening, because if you talk about the NTBs, it's again something which is really shrinking the markets. And we have the various provisions in the protocol to be able to manage the NTBs, but just the application. I do see people going to the border. I see various committees. I see so many meetings at Eala level. I see that at the EAC Secretariat meetings. I see that at the EABC meetings, but there's just nothing which is really happening. Can we just be able to develop the truth and be able to act? Because that's the thing which is really affecting these particular markets. Enforcement of the standards. We find that the standards which is actually in East Africa community is not being applied to the letter. And you find that the member states are still having their specific standards. They work in their own cocoons to be able to have their own national standards, and they apply that. And because of that, it's going to affect the free movement of the goods across the region. Let me tell you something. There is no better vehicles for the market penetration in this region than the East Africa community. Why? Because of the proximity advantage. We are now, the key word today is actually what we call the African Continental Free Trade Area. But where are those countries in after? Someone would be a place where you can't be able to access, the Ugandan goods cannot be able to access these particular markets. But the places, markets which are interconnected by very good road network, we can't be able to harness that particular potential. And we talk about bigger markets. Now we talk about, we are being, on our face, is African Free Continental Trade Area, which is being talked about today. What happened to Comesa? It was killed by the NTBs. Or it's being killed by the NTBs. So if you're not careful, we keep on talking about the African Free Continental Trade Area, while the main market which we have, based on the logistics advantages, is actually the markets which are close to us, which can be able to access easily. I think members have talked about the stay of application. The stay of application. Actually, I would say from the private sector perspective that it becomes another tariff book. In fact, if you just look about the stay of application today, it becomes another tariff book on its own. Because every time you are drawing a budget, can somebody help me with water, please? My water. When every time somebody talks about, I don't want to today, you can be able to start a factory today. Before you can even be able to start production, you've already applied to be protected. When I was young and we are negotiating the East Africa Community protocols, especially when it comes to the CET, when you mentioned that you have the capacity, the one which you are doubted, we had members from each drawn from all the member states, what we used to call verification missions, to go and look at the capacity, to look at the quality, Capacity means the demand against the supply. They look at the pricing, advantage, competitiveness, and they look at the quality for you to be able to give a tick that you can be protected. Today you apply, the next minute it's already been gazetted, irrespective of what you do. And because of that, it's really distorting the whole. We talked about the clearance. I think I'll not elaborate on that because my friend from Starbucks had already mentioned that. But I'm happy that Uganda is really at the forefront of this. Uganda has really eased the movement of the goods. And Katesh, thank you so much. When you are the commissioner, I think you did so much. Uganda has really exploited the element provision of the AEO, Authorized Economic Operator. Today, I'm on the green channel. My goods don't need to be checked at the border. My goods will come straight, they go to my bonded warehouse. I'm self-administering my bond. They only come once in a while to be able to verify. And I think I'm happy that the compliance level is very high. But the problem is that even if you clear my goods and the truck has been cleared, but there's a queue of 10 kilometers, how will that truck move? That's not the major impediment that we really have. So I think those are the key areas that I really wanted to highlight. I think those provisions of the various stages of the integration need to be looked at in terms of what are the impediments which we are having in the private sector to be able to handle these kind of potentials. And the last point of call actually would be Eala in terms of the implementation of these particular provisions which are there. IEBC and all cannot do much because obviously they are always tied because they can't be able to cane a member state. Yeah? But really, what can we be able to do from the legal perspective to be able to make sure that the private sector and the integration is something which can be harnessed to the full potential? I'm very happy that today, if you're to give our presidents opportunity to go straight in the political federation, I think they're very happy if somebody can be appointed the president of each of our community. But really, let's look at the stages that we have and try to harness what we have in terms of the potential of the other processes that we have within the each of our community. Thank you so much.
That as the Assembly, we are coming up with a bill, the standardization, accreditation, the accreditation and standardization bill. We want to make sure that all our goods and all our companies, there is a standard and there is accreditation so that we meet the requirements to compete with the other market. In line of discussion and timeline on concession, I think that one we have taken. We will have a discussion around it. May I now take this opportunity to welcome for brief feedback the East African Business Council.
The protocol already established. My name is Singer Wabogo, work with Mukwano Industries. Mukwano is a household name in East Africa. You can visit our website, so I will not say what we do and what we don't do, www.mukwano.com. I happen to be a Ugandan chapter on East African Business Council, and PSFU is our house. So, whereas there is East African community, there is also East African Business Council. But locally here, we subscribe to Private Sector Foundation. So I'm here, having been invited by Piaka. We're very grateful that PSFU has actually stated our case. We in private sector, time is key. Like all my colleagues have said, whoever has done business, including yourselves, sometimes you delegate and you don't give time to the business that you invest in. But we who sit down and see each shilling borrowed is turned around, then all the challenges talked about, I don't want to repeat them again. But what I can ably say here, as a member of EABC, first of all, ask yourself, why do we have all these associations? We in private sector are supposed to set up businesses, do businesses, pay taxes, and grow the nation, and grow our region. But sometimes now we are also becoming like politicians, engaging into associations, chasing advocacy issues, what George was saying really, should it be George's problem why a truck spends 8 hours at the border? Why do we have people that we have who are supposed to give us services? When we ask for good infrastructure, everybody knows it, that if I'm going to invest money here and I need to have my goods in Kisangani, there should be a good road. And if I need to fly and go to Burundi to see my business, there should be a good flight. I'm not in air aviation. I'm in manufacturing, I'm in agribusiness. So let me concentrate on my core business and do it very well and deliver. In short, like our president says, can everybody do his Ruvimbi? I don't know how we would turn Ruvimbi into English. Kila mtu afanye kipango chake and everything will be sorted out. That's what I pray that the Forum for Parliament here, having invited us to talk face to face with Eala, whatever the legislation you are doing, do it in essence that you are doing your part for the good of our region and for the good of this world. Thank you so much.
As we invite the Stanbic Bank. Stanbic Bank.
I stand on the protocol that has been established here, and I just want to reaffirm that it's a privilege for Stanbic to be part of this conversation. I will not take note that we're the only bank who are here, so I will not make that comment. But what I will say is that we are a bank that is very committed to what this conversation is about. A little bit about Stanbic. I know that Stanbic is a familiar name in this environment. We are a member of the largest bank in Africa by assets, the Standard Bank Group. But also from an East Africa perspective, we are in most of the East African countries. So whether it be South Sudan or Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, DRC, we are represented in all these markets. There's a few where we are not. Hopefully we'll be able to go there very soon. I want to speak about one or two things here about how we can enable growth in the region. Our role as a bank is really around enabling trade, but also capital allocation. But I think there are some opportunities that we've observed that we'd like to share. One is to note that there has been progress in reforming financial systems in East Africa. And even though that progress is noted, it's also uneven. I think depending on which country you go to, you find there's uneven practices and consistency is not yet achieved. So we find that we are still lagging in many respects compared to the emerging markets which have managed to put in place systems and controls to manage capital, to manage liquidity, to manage how it is easy to access this capital, and to also make it affordable. We see real opportunities on how risk can be better managed and how the profitability and the soundness of banks in the regions can become more favorable. We also think that considerable effort is needed to strengthen and harmonize the regulatory and supervisory frameworks. Like I said, I must commend the regulatory bodies, because a lot of work has been done to partner and work together. We hear this from our central bank, but we still see opportunity to do that better, to foster regional and financial integration. We also realize that there are staffing challenges. Not every country is at the same level in terms of access to deep expertise, and we have to make it easier for this expertise to move across different countries. And as we say, if we are East African, we are less concerned about the boundaries of the country, but how we can benefit from integrating across the community. So this is something we're very passionate about. So there are some efforts building a common market, but we do require harmonization on licensing, on regulation, on these supervisory practices, and safety net arrangements. We also know that a large component of our customers, especially if we look at Uganda, which is not dissimilar to Kenya and Tanzania, many people still operate in the informal space. There's a lot of informal trade across the border, and
we have to find a way to make it affordable for the participants in this, but also find a way to enable them to have a better predictability on how long they can stay. Because we know that many of these individuals, many of these small businesses, they struggle once they feel a little bit of pressure in the economy. So that's a big important part of what we feel needs to be strengthened. So we believe there are some opportunities. One, as I've said, the central bank can work together much more intentionally in building this framework, whether it be around capital and how we ensure that there is a smart way to avail capital at the right structures across the different levels of financial institutions, and to strengthen them in a way that ensures that all parts of the market are served. We also think that on the liquidity side, there can be better harmonization. Again, you find that different countries have gotten different approaches, but if we are East African, again, we should benefit from those collaborative engagements to ensure that we rise the level of how we manage that risk. Because many banks today price expensively simply because of the concerns around the impact on that liquidity. We also think legal frameworks can be better harmonized, and we've spoken this before. We know that, yes, the cost of credit is high, and it's something that as a banking industry we are looking forward to reduce, find ways to improve. But we also know that in instances where loans are uncollectible, the legal framework does not work in a manner that supports a quick resolution for all the parties concerned. So that's an area that we believe that if there is collaborative approach to finding a real sustainable solution, it will really play a big role. The free movement of labor is critical, and I've spoken about this already. I think across the boundaries of our borders we should be less prescriptive, be more accommodative, and enable that flow of expertise to happen much more simply. And I think the last one for me is on tax regimes, where we make it easier for services that are created across our different boundaries to be easily accessible at an affordable price. So I want to thank the members of Eala for their meeting. We thank you, the members of Piaka. We've been partners on the journey. We continue to be partners on the journey. We're excited for what is possible from this collaboration, and we thank you for the opportunity to say one or two words about this. Thank you very much.
So much. Can we give a hand clap and appreciate Stanbic Bank? Briefly, Kasita. Now, from the perspective of this, the people that organize trade.
My name is J. Mbakana Mrondo from Kasita, Uganda. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity given, and most especially my brother Katesh for that candid statement that you make whenever you meet with anything to do with ESC and this country at large. I would like to re-echo what earlier speakers have talked about, especially Katesh and Sala Kajingo, when it comes to the ESC and the developments that happen within. First, I would like to talk about the taxation. We need, as the ES, to make that group shift, moving away from the individualism or unilateral arrangement, whereby we have seen Kenya assigning the EPAs while other member states are left behind. This gives others a disadvantage where we would have expected to move together as the ESC. Then secondly, if we are moving as a bloc towards African Continental Free Trade Area, why would we prefer to negotiate individually or unilaterally when it comes to where we have greater interest, that is the area of working with the EU. And then secondly, the Common Market Protocol, we have had issues with the Common Market Protocol. We would have expected more open approach when it comes to especially issuing of work permits. But there has been a greater hindrance when it comes to issuance of work permits, especially in Tanzania and Kenya. We hope our brothers from Kenya and Tanzania do pick this up and see what can be done. Logistics, surely we as Uganda, we are really disadvantaged being without that proximity to the sea. And the disadvantage of not having that connectivity which can move cargo easily, that is railway and water. We are hoping that as ESC we should look into more and more into the blue economy and see how much we can do to grow the economies across intra-regional trade and intra-regional movement. We had issues to do when with air flight. If you try to establish how much is being paid between ESC countries and Africa as a continent, vis-a-vis what is being paid by EU countries or by EU passengers for their intra-trade, there is a lot to be desired. We need to approach it with a regional airlines which could solve some of these issues. And last but not least, the issues to do with resolutions of conflicts within the ESC. We need it timely as the private sector, because time is money to the private sector. The longer we take, the longer we lose. So if it can be done, having a committee which should look into matters to do with the conflict, then a lot can be achieved within the partner states. Then lastly, travel restrictions, which involves visas. DRC still demands for visas. Southern Sudan is still demanding for visas. Where we would have expected to have a visa-free or an open border system, which could encourage development through trading, we are facing some restrictive movement of persons, especially those seeking for labor. We need to do something better. We need to do much to that front. And the very last, common currency. We have been talking about this protocol, the other protocol about the ESC formation and others. We are still looking forward to common currency to avoid and reduce on what we would call exchange exchange loss. A lot is involved when we are moving money from one side to the other side. You go to Kenya, you are supposed to exchange before entering Kenya. You go to Tanzania, you do the same. You go to DRC, you do the same. When coming back, you have to do the same because you need to do the reversal of the same money which you had exchanged into Uganda currency. When are we seeing the realization of the common currency in this region? I submit. I thank you very much.
To invite Mr. Stewart. I bring you greetings from Roofings Group. As you can see, Roofings is the strength of the nation. We want to see Roofings becoming the strength of the ESC. I greet you all. Thank you for clapping once again. That's very good. I see other captains of the industry, steel industry. I see many associations where we actually belong. I see a number of honorables who have supported us all the way. We've just made 30 years of existence in East Africa, but more especially in Uganda. We are a quality steel and plastics manufacturer of construction products. We are located in Lubowa as our head office, but very soon our Namave plant, I think, will be taking over because it's where the most modern and high value infrastructure investment is now based, which is serving both the local market and the East African region. We are very happy and thankful for this partnership, and we want to pledge our support towards your activities. We want to be involved as much as possible. Many issues have been raised. I don't have to repeat that. But to promote trade, to promote manufacturing, to promote level playing field, to harmonize standards, to embrace logistics. How do we access the market? How do we have labor moving at least within the region freely before we can start talking about the continental free trade area we are agitating about? What about East Africa? Where I come from, I'm a grandson of Kabalega Bunyoro. We say the night dancer starts from their home. So if we have not yet harmonized as East Africa, how are we really planning and thinking we are going to be able to do things fairly on an Africa level? This is, I think, food for thought. But going forward, I want to believe that I still want to quote my dad. He was a medical doctor, rest in peace. He used to say, as when a patient approached says him, he would say, as long as you have accepted that you are sick, it means you need medical attention, and that has already given you a percentage of psychological healing. So the mere fact that we are identifying all these issues, the airspace, network issues, taxation here and there, the difference in exchange rates, why are we trading in dollars when we are East African community? We have identified our problem. Okay, thank you. I want to thank you very much, and we look forward to meeting any other day for another program. I was only blaming the chair, Honorable Katesh, that you should have added on this program for the team, especially those who are coming from outside Uganda, to visit a number of entities. I don't want to decide to talk about roofing. There is a great expansion that is going on in Namamve, the industrial park, which should be the pride of Uganda and the pride of Africa. Most of these things we have them now here being developed. We need to be relying on importation as much as we are doing. I thank you. Thank you very much. May I take this opportunity to invite Uganda Airlines.
Greetings from Uganda Airlines. As Uganda Airlines, would like to thank you for your patronage, making Uganda Airlines be in the sky for 5 years now. As Uganda Airlines, we are committed to keep on creating linkages, opportunities, and connections within East Africa and Africa at large. For example, for us, we have gone ahead, no matter the hindrance and restrictions from government, connecting passengers from all over Africa. They can transit Uganda for not more than 24 hours without visas, and we can also accommodate them. We call it STPC. So do not fear to connect through the hub, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. That restriction, at least we have negotiated with the immigration and relevant authorities. They don't pay transit visas. That is one way of how we are creating linkages within the East African community and at large, and Africa at large. Then secondly, we're opening up more destinations. We need your support as members of East African countries. Right now we are doing Harare. We opened up Harare last month. Then we opened up Lusaka. Anytime from now, we'll be opening up Gatwick, that is United Kingdom. That is because of your support. However, despite the progress, we have had a few challenges. The private sector, Kasita mentioned about visas. Then we also advocate for a uniform fair tariffs within East African region. Some people charge higher prices, higher fare than what competition is also offering, which is not fair since we are talking about East African community. Then also the visa issues. Visa, it limits our operation in terms of numbers and making sure that all destinations that we're operating are break even. Then lastly, it's about slow process in authorization of some routes. I will note some countries are very slow in granting us foreign operators permits. I will not mention, but we need your assistance and guidance in this so that we can continue opening up more routes. I encourage you to keep on using Uganda Airlines. You have seen the statistics. Every month there is an increase in numbers, traffic inflows, and both inbound and outbound, that it creates market for our goods and services within the East African region. I therefore submit, keep flying the crane to the power of Africa. Thank you.
He comes from the border. I was in Kenya in Busia. The purpose was because I wanted some goods in Busia, Uganda, and I had to cross to Muchemi's hardware to buy. This makes me a true son for the East African region. I was born on Busia border. My father had two mothers. One stepmother was from a place called Funyula in Kenya. I am blessed that sometimes I eat breakfast in Kenya and lunch in Uganda. I've never had a dinner in Kenya because I'm still shopping. But ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy that today the members for the East Africa are here. Bad enough that my speaker for East Africa have not heard our problems. This morning, this noon when I was driving to Kampala, the trailers were 80 kilometers from the border of Kenya and Uganda. And the reason is one, Kenya's scanner is down. Reason number two, Kenya has no parking yard. And honorable members know that when one trailer gets fire, the whole Busia, Uganda and Kenya burns to ashes. Why is this a problem? Because we have not harmonized our laws governing the border. Because what is wrong with Kenya and Uganda working together to have a joint border depot whereby all the goods can be, whereby all the trailers can park? So our members for the East African community, kindly help us with such problems to be solved as quick before God comes back. And secondly, I want to assure the colleagues who are here that most common people on the borders, Namanga, I keep crossing when going to Arusha to Muzunguni, Busia, Ruakaka and other borders, people don't know the importance for the East African cooperation. People don't know the protocols. People don't know the trade regimes. Our local people who are in millions, we request that next time when the East African Parliament comes, allow to visit one border in Uganda. It will help our people at least to recognize that the East African cooperation is very, very important. Thirdly, I request the partner states respect the trade agreements. Uganda have suffered a lot with Kenya and Southern Sudan, even with Rwanda as I talk now. Sure, it is not in the boardroom, but we who are on the ground, we know. As I talk now, we have 300 trucks of flour parked on the border of Southern Sudan. Beginning with last week, they refused our flour to go to Southern Sudan, which we believe is a trade war. I know some people will say no, but this morning I had a meeting with the members of Ruahi, which is a validation factory in Busia, exporting flour to Southern Sudan. So with such issues, we need harmonization of trade and trade agreements to be respected. We have had so many times whereby Kenya have said, Ugandan milk to go in Kenya. Uganda also says the same. It comes with fuel to an extent that another East African government goes to court to allow the fuel to move. But why is all this coming? Is it because we have refused to listen and respect the trade agreements among ourselves? Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to agree with Nikasita that the worker permits are a very big problem in our region. We still have challenges with our brothers in Kenya and the TZ, the people we call the Abakombozi. Abakombozi are still refusing our people to get worker permits freely. I know they might be controlling their jobs, but why have we opened Uganda to everybody in East Africa? We therefore request them to follow suit so that we can work freely in our region. I know most of the words I talk, intellectuals will not want to hear them because they are in boardrooms, they don't visit borders. But these are the challenges we are getting. I really want to thank the whole of members who are here from all the partner states for coming. But my prayer is one time when you come or when you go to any East African country, visit one border and find the challenges affecting our people. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Jackson and for the interest of time, my name remains Atima Jackson. I represent the people of Arua Central Division in Arua City, which is in West Nile. It's very unfortunate the Right Honorable Speaker of Eala has stepped out, but what I am presenting, Honorable Moderator, it will be prudent for you to have a copy and hand over to the Right Honorable Speaker, because the voices I'm raising here are collective voices from the traders of Uganda who petitioned Eala through me, because I am a member of trustees of Chamber of Commerce, Uganda National Chamber of Commerce. I'm not only talking as a member of Parliament, but also as Chamber of Commerce. I therefore would like to have this copy handed over to you so that you can give this.
Commissioner Fatuma, who will then pass it.
Thank you very much, Honorable Siranda. This is petition to East African Legislative Assembly sitting in Kampala, October-November 2024, from Uganda traders to South Sudan and DRC Congo. We, the citizens of Uganda working and doing business within the EAC, do hereby petition the East African Legislative Assembly sitting in Uganda on these issues below. I will put them in a summary way. 1. The road network of neighboring countries like DRC and South Sudan from Uganda, especially Arua to Aba, Arua to Dungu, Arua Isiro, Arua Bonia and Kisangani in DR Congo, and Oraba Yei and Oraba Yambio in South Sudan to Western Equatorial State, where routine maintenance is completely not there. This should be a serious concern by our governments, because if we have poor state of roads, trade becomes a big problem. Number 2, local relations around the cross-border town is not good. Soldiers are harsh, especially the South Sudanese and Congolese, with roadblocks everywhere and extortion of money from business people in the names of taxes which are not clear, no clear tax policy. The officers behave as if they are not on salary. In other words, they seem not to be on any payroll and survive on extortion. It's a very serious concern. Traders are paying monies from one roadblock to another. They end up losing a lot of money. Number 3, lawlessness on the side of DRC and South Sudan, where mistreatment of business people at immigration points and revenue checkpoints of those countries. The staff there are too harsh, hostile, and too rude, most of the times putting people at gunpoint. They have threatened the people, put people on gunpoint, and even shot some people. And in the process, businesses end up getting collapsed. Number 4, security collaboration among its member states agencies. At times, many things are stolen from Uganda, and their recovery becomes a very big problem. A case in point, Arua Regional Referral Hospital lost a brand new ambulance, and it was taken to DRC, and the authorities in DRC knew where this ambulance was. When Ugandan security tried to follow this ambulance, they could not be supported by the authorities. How do we call ourselves EAC, yet we cannot support each other? Number 5, variation in tax regimes. This one, somebody talked about it. Tax regimes need to be harmonized. That's why we have smuggling all over. That's why my brother, Honorable Macho, is talking about smuggling in Busia, smuggling in West Nile. People are suffering. Let's have this harmonized. Telephone network disparities, where Vodacom, Airtel of DRC do affect or interfere with the network of MTN and Airtel of Uganda at all border points. It affects business transactions of governments like URA and immigration. Moderator, these are very important points, because as EAC we are collecting taxes. So if our network affects, when traders will want to pay by use of electronic devices, it affects, so you cannot execute businesses on time. 7, immigration. Employment should have a common or local staff to underpin the language barriers at customs. Many times you realize that people who travel may not know the other language on the other side, so transaction becomes a problem. So we will need a policy where local people can be there to help traders. Number 8, Uganda happened to have closed Oraba, Congo Central African route for transit of goods 10 years ago. There's a route which goes through Oraba. So Uganda government closed this 10 years ago, and subsequently Oraba Kaya route was closed 3 years ago in the names of fighting smuggling. But instead, this move has killed business along this line from Arua, Maracha, Koboko, and along this route. Growth of economy can happen when there's no hindrance of such. When you close a route of that nature, it affects all the growth that will take place along that route will be hindered. So we will ask the intervention of EAC to address this. Lastly, the EAC visa they talked about. Other countries are flourishing very well. The challenge we have is with South Sudan. We allow the South Sudanese brothers and sisters to enter here free, but when Ugandans are going there, they have to pay. Why is that happening? So these are things that we will want you to harmonize. Thank you very much. I beg to submit.
Thank you so much. Can we clap? Can we give a hand clap to our MP? We're a people-centered community, and when a representative of people raises concerns, I think we take them very appreciative, honorable, and we want to assure you that we take charge. Now, the Honorable George is coming in to do 2 key roles. He will also appreciate us, but also invite for us the chairperson of Biaka. Captains of industry,
distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very, very fruitful afternoon. And I must say that we as members of Eala are very appreciative to Piaka and all of you captains of industry who have put this together. Let me start by saying that the conversation here just confirms the passion that we have for EAC. They say you feel the pain when you love something, because when you lose it, you feel the pain. If we didn't love EAC, we would not be feeling the pain, especially in the areas that are not working well. But you know, I refuse the notion that there are people who have been posting on social media. Our frustrations can sometimes drive us to say things that are not very well considered. There are those who say we are better off without EAC. And I tell them, you are living in the past. I was told to talk about the politics, but I don't want to go into that because we are now in the last segment of our very fruitful afternoon. We will spare that for another day. All I can tell you is that our union may be imperfect. We may be having challenges. We may be having differences. But I can tell you that the wheels of integration are unstoppable. That to some of us and many of you who experience regional integration, you know for sure that the wheels of integration are unstoppable in spite of the challenges that we face. And the framers of the treaty, and indeed those who lead EAC, knew that it was not going to be easy. Is it JF Kennedy who said that we go to the moon not because it's easy, but because we understand that when we get to the moon, we advance our science, we advance our knowledge, we deepen our understanding of the world. So it wasn't easy, even for those who are framing this treaty and for our forefathers. But they understood that this hard work pays. So to understand EAC is to understand that it's a give and take concept. Win some, lose some. But in the end, the big picture prevails. And that's why we are in this integration together. So I want to thank the private sector players, because indeed private sector is the key driver of our integration. When we met the president of Uganda, President Museveni, he told us that if we can spend more time to speak to private sector players, to go to the borders, to initiate and legislate to facilitate trade, the rest will fall in place. Because good business is good politics. When you have a good business environment, you are going to create jobs, you're going to create income. And you can only do that when you deepen our markets and widen our markets. If you think that you are going to remain sovereign in this thing called countries, you are only conserving poverty. You are in the business of poverty conservation. Because if indeed you want to fight poverty, then you need to widen the market, you need to open up and deepen the markets so that you create opportunities for businesses to thrive, and you create opportunities for people to improve, to earn income and improve on their livelihoods. For us as an assembly, our work is cut out. Listening to you, you are speaking the language that we want to hear. And I like the honesty with which you have actually spoken here. So the good news is that we have the policymakers here. We have the Honorable Minister who is here. We have what we call, if you look at the power structure of EAC, you will know that at the heart, the key driver of EAC integration, by the way, in its current formation, is actually the council. The council has the role of policy. The council has the role of implementation, ensuring that all protocols are implemented, ensuring that all policies are implemented, ensuring that all legislation takes effect. So the rubber meets the ground at the point when council functions effectively. So that's why you'll find that in our legislative work, we are always asking, where is council, where is the position of council? Council in this case is not just ministers of EAC affairs. Council is, we have sectoral councils. So we have a sectoral council on defense, a sectoral council on security, a sectoral council on trade, a sectoral council on agriculture. So all matters relating to all these sectors are escalated through those sectoral councils, and they become policy. It's at that point that it actually takes effect. So private sector players, please ensure that you constantly engage with your sectoral councils. Engage with the sectoral council on trade, on matters of trade. The Honorable Bart is here, and his colleagues in the ministry, they should constantly engage with you, the private sector players. Those who are engaged in agriculture, try to get the ministers of agriculture. Then from here, you are going to have them, amplify your voices. If there is a legislative, if there is a matter of legislation, it will gain traction at the Eala very fast. We usually, council business takes precedence in our legislative work. So, but we want to thank you, and indeed, we are going to create these platforms so that we begin to hear from you and see how we can translate these voices into action. The trouble in the EAC is translating these very good voices into action. So we have waxed lyrical about how integration is the, is the new silver bullet. But we are talking about it conceptually. We have got to make it work for ordinary citizens so that we can change the fortunes of our region. We can make our community much more deeply integrated. I thank you so much. Let me take this singular honor to invite the chairperson of the Parliamentary Forum on EAC Affairs, PIACA, to come and address us. And as she comes, I really want to thank you and your team of PIACA for putting this together. And I hope that you can replicate this in all the other parliaments in the region so that we can have a critical mass of policy makers. We need to build that critical mass of political goodwill in the region. The bulk of the non-tariff barriers that we are seeing here is driven by political interests. We politicians here are non-tariff barriers. We are, because we haven't yet transitioned from our constituencies to national and from national to regional. So when I'm elected as a member of parliament for Busia municipality, I speak for Busia municipality. I have forgotten that I am part of the wider, of Uganda and East Africa and Africa. The day we begin to speak to the real issues affecting East Africans, we are going to deliver this integration. And the politicians, you are the spokespersons of this integration. do not abdicate that responsibility. It's not anybody's responsibility. It is our responsibility to speak out and inspire our ordinary citizens to embrace East African community. So with this, I invite the Honorable Chairperson.
My name is Joanne Okia. I'm an MP in the East African community. From Uganda, and I represent a smaller group of people from a district in West Nile called Madi Okolo. Yeah, but we're leaving all those behind and we're going to be known as East Africans. What you're seeing here today is really the dream of PEACA. People have been asking, what is PEACA? Why does PEACA exist? PEACA is parliamentarians from the region of partner states who meet together and organize collaborations and interfaces between the MPs in the Eala, the MPs of the national parliaments, and the private sector. I hope that summarizes what PEACA does. And what we're doing here today is the dream of PEACA, bringing together the different actors so that we can actually solve different issues. We have 3 goals in East Africa, in the East African community, which the President very clearly and simply highlighted. He said 1 is the prosperity of Africa, of East Africa first. And then he said the unity of East Africa and the security of East Africa. I would like to thank in a very special way the private sector who are here today. You know, they say time is money, and for the private sector to actually spend this amount of time discussing, you've really put your money on us, and so we thank you. Without the security, without the unity, it's very hard for the private sector and for all of us to enjoy the prosperity of East Africa. I was a very small business actor. I was trading rice early, around 29, I was trading rice from Kenya as a small business distributor. And there was a small place in Siaya where I used to get the rice. And at that time, there was no tax on the rice from Kenya. And so I was the distributor for Uganda in all the supermarkets. I don't know if you know the rice that was called Prime Harvest, a very tasty rice at a very low cost. Out of the blue, some other business people became clever because rice from Pakistan and other countries was being taxed, but rice from the East African countries was not being taxed coming to Uganda. And other actors now started packing the rice, importing from Pakistan, repackaging and saying made in Kenya. And in 2011, the Uganda government made a decision that they're taxing all rice. And I exited the distribution of Prime Harvest at that point. So all these things affect all of us at different levels. Why do we exist? There used to be something called the Nanyuki series, which would bring together members of parliament from Eala, together with the members of parliament from national state, partner states, and the private sector to discuss issues. Now, this was funded by foreign actors, and we all know, as we heard earlier, that this may not be a very favorable position for us to unite and be as one. And so they stopped funding it. And PEACA has come in to fill that gap, to bring people, to bring all the MPs together with the private sector and the member states together. For the first time, we held one gathering in 2022, and we were able to do that. Since then, we've opened chapters in 5 different member states, and we're hoping that 3 of the member states that are still left hanging will join us. We're hoping, the hopes we have for next year in bringing people together. We're going to have an East African, the first ever East African community marathon. And we're praying and we're asking the chief runner to be the father of the region, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. And we hope that every year we will rotate this in each of the member states. And in that, we'll bring more awareness and unity. As I said, my job here is to invite the Speaker of the Parliament, so I'm not going to go very far, but I would like to invite the private sector to join us in some of these activities. We're going to have another gathering which will have all the members of Parliament from Eala and from the partner states, and we invite the private sector to join us in this. In December, we are going to Mombasa, Kenya, where we'll have engagements at the sidelines of the Eala Games. We invite you still private sector members to join us, support us, and be with us in this.
The Speaker has another engagement. We ask him to come and do a little feedback, but also to assure you that the Assembly is very committed to doing a lot of the things.
Honorable members and colleagues, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Oh, it's good evening. We came here to listen to you. As members of Parliament and as a Speaker, what we are collecting and hearing, it's not shocking, but it's touching us. We have been conducting oversight, outreach. We have been conducting them in Mombasa Port, Dar es Salaam Port. We have been doing oversight in borders, Namanga, Busia, I don't know. But what we are hearing here is that we still have a long way to go after 25 years. It is as if you have Secretariat, the EAC Secretariat, Eala, it is as if we had done not nothing, but we still have a long way to go. After 25 years, our people are still spending 3 days, 2 days or more, spending nights in their trucks without any sanitation. This is very sad. For me, as a Speaker of Eala and through my members, it is as if you had told us, please, save us before we die. And we will do it. We will be proud of our Eala when we'll have a meeting with the stakeholders, and when they will tell us, you Eala, thank you, we had been spending 2 or 3 days at the border, now it's 1 day. We will be proud of ourselves when East Africans will tell us we have been paying our ticket from Bujumbura to Arusha, $2,000. Now we are paying a cheaper ticket, and ticket to Dar es Salaam are cheap, to Nairobi are cheap, to everywhere cheap, because you would have harmonized taxes and tariffs. Uganda Airlines, you could be congratulated. In this region, you are the cheapest in the region. I don't know how you handle it, but when we compare Uganda Airlines tickets and the Rwanda Airlines and Kenya Airways and Air Tanzania, we found that Uganda is a little bit cheaper than others. So please, how can our East African body, which is in charge of harmonizing tariffs, how can he be there and enjoy salaries when the traders themselves are crying and requesting to harmonize? I cannot speak more and more and more. I will have to sit with my members. I know how they are committed to deliver. I know them. We'll sit together and we'll adapt our activities, our calendars, our strategies. I'm sure that we will do something that will make us proud of our Eala 5. Honorable Minister, dear friend, I thank you. I thank you again. And before I go, I wish I could have a small meeting on Monday at 10 in this office that you Uganda leaders, Uganda authorities have. I have a small office here during this plenary. I wish I could meet with our guests, our CEOs. We have Uganda Airlines. I will not maybe remember all of them. You have your friend George, and we have Olemze. We have everyone. I would like to have on Monday 10 morning in my office a small meeting, because I need to know more, and to get maybe some advices from you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
At this point, it's my singular honor to invite the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, represented here by the Honorable Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, Honorable David Bahati, to come and address us. Thank you.
I want to bring the apologies that she could not be with you this evening, but she's with you in spirit. And the members of the private sector, no matter when the speaker is speaking, she's heard in silence, and I'm happy that there is silence in the room. First, if there are any members from the East African Legislative Assembly here who are doubting the seriousness of this meeting, I think the honorable member from the border, Honorable Atima, has reminded you how serious we take this meeting. I also come from the border of Gatuna, and one of the points that he raised, he petitioned. I don't know whether that's the right procedure to petition, but for him, he wrote his petition and said, I'm bringing it here. So, so now, one of the challenges we are having, which he raised, was the issue of telecom. So in one of my sub-counties, Butanda and part of Katuna Town Council, when I'm calling, I have to change to call a Rwandan code to be able to reach Ugandan resident in Uganda. So I join you in your petition to the East African Legislative Assembly I hope that you can have some space for us on Monday. When you are seated, we bring a formal petition. And I think Odong or somebody else can help us to present our petition, if that can help. But the Speaker of the Parliament has given me 4 points to make to you. First, to thank you, Joan, and your team for the wonderful job you are doing as Piaka. She truly appreciates it. Second, to remind you of some of the points that have been raised, that we are here in the East African community for strategic security, for prosperity, for markets, and for political federation. So as leaders in the East African community, we have a responsibility to build on what the people who formed this community to be able to realize it in our lifetime. It is serious business, it's a big responsibility, and efforts like Piaka actually try to bridge the gap between the people and the leaders, and it's the only way that we can achieve political federation. The only way we can achieve political federation. We, second, as Parliament and also working together with the executive, we are committed to ensure that we have policies to remove the non-tariff barriers that hinder our community. It is not, I tried, this is not her point, but I tried recently in the footsteps, to walk in the footsteps of Professor Mazurui. Professor Mazurui, I think he was coming from TZ or from Kenya. You remember Professor Mazurui? He was from Mombasa. So he went to Nairobi International, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport without a passport. And he said, I'm going to Ghana. He said, I'm going to Ghana. He said, where is your passport? Where is your ID? He said, no, don't you know me? I'm Professor Mazurui. I'm an African. I'm going to an African country. So they reminded him, Professor Mazurui, that that's academic. But when you are crossing, you have to have a passport. So I also tried recently, 4 months ago, I went to the airport. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have a passport. I wanted to go to Kenya. I said, don't you know me? I'm a Minister of State for Industry. I'm crossing to Kenya. They said, no, Minister, that doesn't work that way. So they stopped me. Is it possible that in our lifetime you can just go to the airport and cross to another country without being? And with new technology, I think it is possible. With new technology, it is possible to just go with your fingerprint, place it on a computer, and just cross. Just cross. So we have serious issues to address. So we are confirming that we are committed to resolving all non-tariff barriers that hinder our community. We have identified some. I think the private sector raised a number of issues. Now we agreed as a community to have a uniform standard so that when you satisfy in Uganda your goods, then they are accepted in Kenya. But they keep at the heads of state level, everybody is committed. But when it comes to the operational level, we have issues. We have some products which are very popular. When I was meeting the Committee of Foreign Affairs yesterday, part 1, they were raising the issues of MOU that we signed with Rwanda, we signed with Burundi, and one of the things that people from my neighbors from Rwanda have been liking from our country. I'm afraid to say it because I don't believe in it, though I get tax from it. The Uganda warrant people like it in Rwanda. But now they are sabotaging it from entering, from entering. So we have been asking, what is the problem? So I want to challenge you, members of the East African Legislative Assembly, and the one from Rwanda has told me that they are doing it. How many times are you meeting us as ministers to remind us that there is a challenge here we are hearing? Can you resolve it as a chapter? I think it's important that you interact with the Minister of Trade, with the Minister of Finance, with the Minister of Work, so that we can resolve some of these issues. Because you are monitoring these things at an operational level on a daily basis, so it will be important that there's a chapter you can actually deliberately and intentionally interact with government to resolve these issues. But on behalf of government, we are committed to resolving all non-tariff barriers so that we can have a community that will realize the prosperity of the people. The Speaker wants to thank the private sector. Of our GDP, combined GDP of 163 billion, almost 60% of this GDP is in the hands of the private sector. Here in Uganda, we have a GDP of 55 billion, but the government's budget is 6 billion, almost like 6. Now it's around 11 billion. You know, meaning that the rest of 44 billion is in your hands. So the future of East African community is actually in the hands of the private sector. So for you to have spared the time to come and raise your issues, I hope, Joan, that the issues that have been raised will be documented properly. Those that need laws, you bring it to our attention so that we can follow them up. Those that need policy, you also bring them up. Those that need East Africa Legislative Assembly, so that when we meet with these people here and they have spared the whole day talking, their talking does not end in vain. We are also committed to harmonizing taxes. Why is it that we can charge 18% VAT, 16% VAT in Kenya and then Uganda? These are things that we can harmonize. So we want to assure the private sector that we will follow up the issues that we have raised, and our commitment is there to make sure that these issues are harmonized. A few years ago when I was in Arusha, I had the Uganda shillings and I failed to change to TZ currency and dollars. I don't know whether that has been resolved. Anybody from TZ? Are we now changing now? We are now changing Uganda shillings. You see, there is really an issue that you have Uganda shillings and then you can't exchange it in Kenya. Then how can you talk about a common currency? So let's really resolve some of these issues. Our colleagues from the TZ, if you can take up this issue and we resolve it. The Speaker of the Parliament of Uganda is also informing you that as a country we are committed to reducing the cost of doing business within the community and also within the African Continental Free Trade Area. The other day I was in Nairobi and President Ruto said that they tried to export goods to Accra and it took almost 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks to export goods from Accra, from Nairobi to Accra. I was with the Minister of Trade again in Nairobi. He told me that he had moved through 5 countries to Gambia. Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Ghana, so 5 countries go through that. So I think as government, we we are committed, and His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni is providing leadership on this. You have had his commitment of building roads in DRC Congo, because Congo, we are now having exports worth over 500 million US dollars. So if we can work together and through the East African Legislative Assembly to continue putting pressure on the legislative side, I'm sure that we shall realize the community that we really deserve. So we also committed to ensuring that we bring down the cost of money, because the cost of money has been a big issue with the private sector. We have set up on our side as a country UDB, Uganda Development Bank. At least now we are supporting a number of manufacturers in Uganda. We hope that our East African Development Bank can be supported fully to really support especially the manufacturing community. But above all this cannot work if there is no peace and security. It's our prayer that our community, all of us, will work to realize a peaceful community for all countries and avoid all conflicts. And we are happy that that is happening, that efforts are in place to do that. So this evening, I'm extremely happy to represent the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament, and I hope you members of Eala, you'll spare some time to visit our beautiful country. On the east, there is the source of Nile. It will be shaming that you are a member of East African Legislative Assembly, you have never reached the source of Nile. Also to tell you that one of the places, you remember when Sir Winston Churchill visited Uganda, he made a powerful statement that Uganda is a pearl of Africa. And that statement was made, it is alleged, that when he visited Lake Bunyonyi, where I come from, is when he looked, after looking at the beauty of the place, he said, this one, Uganda is indeed the pearl of Africa. So please you spare some time and visit the south of Uganda, Lake Bunyonyi. And I'm talking about these tourist attractions. I mean, we have them. I'm not like people. Do we have some people from Kenya? Yes. There is a time they were advertising Mount Kilimanjaro as if it was theirs. And when the Tanzanians complained, they said no, they are quiet about it, so we are advertising it as an East African asset. So we are helping to advertise that. So for me, what I'm talking about, Uganda has, we have them. So Joan and the group, thank you so much for organizing this, and on behalf of the Speaker, to assure you that the Parliament of Uganda is committed to supporting these efforts. If there is anything that we can do to propel Piaka to another level, we are here. If there is anything that government can do to support Piaka, we are also here. Members of the private sector, we are forming this, signing these protocols for you. We are now 333 million East Africans. 2050, we shall be 886. 2075, East Africa will be above 1 billion. Somebody raised an issue. He said, I think it was from the private sector, said, why do you talk about this big population, but the demand is not there for our products? I think what you tried to mean was that the purchasing power is very low. So we have a duty as different countries to build the purchasing power of our community, so that when these people manufacture, there is demand for their products. So with those few words, I now declare this meeting closed. but have not adjourned other activities afterwards. Thank you so much.